the way I look at it, like we know that we are advocating or we are writing about IVRT and IVPT in all the upcoming PSGs, product-specific guidances. So am I interpreting it correct that development on IVRT, his main utility is to bring the generic topicals just by comparison of IVRT and IVPT with the reference? In other words, what I'm asking is, what will be the utility of IVRT or even IVPT from the new drug side?
Well, IVRT during product development is an extremely useful tool. And while you may not use it for release and stability, you definitely can use that information from IVRT very, very well for developing an appropriate formulation, even for your NCEs. And that's been done. We've done it over the years. And that I would not say that, that's the IVRT is only used for generics. Actually, it's very useful in some of the development of NCEs. It helps you understand
product development. Yeah, I mean, definitely product development, both IVRT and IVPT, they can be very, very useful. Another aspect I want to touch it, I think I saw in the chat, somebody asked that question that, and we are facing that in the agency, that how to bring a topical product back.
It's frozen.
Tapash,
I have a question. How do we bring Tapash back?
I think he's.
So I know what the question is because it's come up before. And that is, sometimes you have a product. Oh, Tapash is back.
Unmute yourself. He's muted.
Tapash, if you hear us, we don't hear you anymore.
Sorry, can you hear me now? Someone?
Yes.
Hello? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so let me repeat. Okay. So another comment I saw in the chat box is how to bring a expired product back to the market. Maybe it has not been manufactured for last 10 years, or maybe the sponsor manufacturers has changed. So generally, we know that gold standard for topical product is to go through the whole 9 years of clinical trials and all, which are expensive, time consuming and all. In the agency, I think at least from the new drug side, we are facing that issue very frequently. So, and I think IVRT and IVPT has tremendous role there, but at the same time, I just want to ask the panel as well as audience that what they think, how do we mitigate that issue or solve that problem to bring an expired product back, which probably is not in the market for last 10 years. Anybody wants to address? Maybe by default goes back to Sam again from the generic side.
Well, I should clarify. I don't know why it goes to me as default, but this is not a generic specific issue. In fact, Tapash is mostly experiencing it in other areas. So scientifically, this is tough. But I think the reason for that is that happens in a couple of different contexts. In certain contexts, let's work with the context where you actually know a great deal about that original product. I think the implications for IVRT are in situations where you have a frame of reference and the original product actually has, and actually I think, Tapash, you've been a great champion of this, and I think it's a really interesting idea, very supportive of it, that when you have your clinical batches, and this is the batch with which you demonstrated, you had your evidence, your clinical evidence demonstrating the safety and effectiveness of the product, that you have an IVRT method that's validated right at that time, and that gives you a reference release rate for that batch with all its characteristics that were then linked to its clinical performance. In those situations, when you have something like that, then at a later date, in a variety of different contexts, you have a frame of reference for saying, look, we're gearing up again, we're manufacturing the product again, and now we'd like to be able to show that we pick up where we left off. We have a frame of reference with that IVRT to match. But is the IVRT alone? I would say that we need more than that, and this is where Q3 characterization, I think, is increasingly important of those products right at the outset, so that we don't just have an IVRT release rate as a frame of reference, but we have the entire profiling of the Q3 attributes combined with IVRT. I think that gives us a fantastic frame of reference. And when you combine that with knowing what the formulation composition is, that allows you to come back then at a later date and say, I'm using the same formulation composition. My manufacturing process is creating a product that matches the entire profile of established Q3 attributes and IVRT release rate. And I think that really supports being able to bring a product back then.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. I was just trying to extract that answer. So basically, that's what I'm just trying to make my position clear, that because I mostly work from the new drug side, and I face that question, no, it is not required. Why do I have to develop IVRT method? So that is the answer, that as Sam mentioned, that if we had the historic data, then even if it is expired, at least we had something to compare with. But when a product, suppose, not on the market for last 10 years, then the previous product, they didn't have IVRT. Okay, so what should we compare against? Okay, so that's what, even for the new drug side, I am actually advocating that even though if you don't want to use the IVRT as a quality control tool, but please develop and have data with your exhibit or bio batches. So God knows what will happen 10 years down the line. So if something happens and if you go discontinue the product, if somebody else picks up from there, at least we will have some historic data there to compare. That is not the only thing. We look into different things, but at least that can help us. At least one leg out of 10 different legs. So that's all I wanted to tell to the audience. Thank you. Yeah.
Also, Tapash, also if for the new drug chemical entities, suppose you go and launch your product and 10 years down the line, you have a supplier back out or want to change a site, manufacturing site or something, or there are some manufacturing changes for which you can use the SUPAC activity and qualify your transfer or change. So if you have a validated IVRT method, while you're validating, you know the sensitivity of your IVRT to different changes, and you can pretty much predict what you're gonna your answer would be, and you can actually plan for it. So I would highly recommend that. Actually, if you know some potential changes that may happen, you may develop your IVRT with that focus in mind.